Now, the crisis in Nigeria's football management has become a recurring decimal as many football fans continue to express worry over the distractions to the game. Now, for our discussion this morning, here is a background report by Asha Ubali.
That Nigerians love football is an understatement. In fact, many agree that the only time Nigerians seem to agree and unite is when there is football and Nigeria is winning. Much as Nigerians are passionate about football, the management of the game has left many wondering whether the managers share in this same passion of the fans. For many who follow Nigerian football management, there have been series of crises that are becoming a constant variables and almost expected. Many say the recurring leadership tussle has created gaps that have not promoted the growth and development of football in the country, as the country is yet to break certain grounds, particularly at the international stage. The current crisis began in 2014 over who heads the Nigerian Football Federation, as two contenders, Amaju Pinnick and Chris Giwa, have been up and about claiming to be the authentic leaders. With the Court of Arbitration for Sport recognizing Amaju Pinnick as president and the Supreme Court of the Federal Republic of Nigeria affirming Chris Giwa as the duly elected president of the NFF, the stage was set for deeper crisis. This led to the recent FIFA threat to suspend Nigeria from all football activities if the Amaju faction is not allowed to run football according to the provisions of the FIFA status. But with the intervention of the presidency, FIFA shelved its plan to suspend Nigeria when federal government affirmed its recognition of Pinnick as a legitimate NFF boss. However, many have said that this measure is temporary and is unlikely to put an end to this crisis, whose roots go deeper than the two main actors. Guests on Good Morning Nigeria are ready to throw more light on the recurring crisis in Nigerians football management and what can be done to bring lasting peace in the game that millions of Nigerians find joy in.
Thank you very much there for that background report. Now we have joining us to discuss this issue in further detail, Honorable Godfrey Gaya. He was a member of the House of Representatives from 2007 to 2015, and during which time he also served as the House Committee Chairman on Sports. It's at present the Chairman of the Soccer Academy. Honorable Gaya, pleasure to have you with us on Good Morning Nigeria again.
Thank you.
Okay. And joining us from our Lagos Network studios, we're having him on Good Morning Nigeria after a long while. Former Super Eagles captain, his chief, Segun Odegbami. During his heyday, he was known as Mathematical Odegbami. Chief Odegbami, pleasure to have you with us on Good Morning Nigeria.
Morning.
And joining us via Skype from Ibadan is another very well-known face in soccer management and administration in Nigeria, a former coach of the Super Eagles and also FIFA instructor, Chief Festus Adegboye Onigbinde. Chief Onigbinde, pleasure to have you with us on Good Morning Nigeria. All right, let's begin this conversation. Let me start off with Chief Segun Odegbami, and then we'll go over to Chief Festus Onigbinde. Segun Odegbami, when you were playing for the Green Eagles, as it was then called, the IICC, that's the IICC Shooting Stars of Ibadan, I recall, there was a name that everybody knew, and that was Sonny Dankaro. He was the head of, he was chairman of NFA, as it was called at the time. And the stories that we hear these days about infighting and conflict in soccer management hardly ever arose. If anything, I mean, it's soccer and administration went on so smoothly. What was it that went right at that time, and what is it that is wrong with soccer management today?
Yeah, thank you very much. Well, Nigeria was a much better place then than it is today. And that is something that cuts across the entire spectrum of our lives. So football cannot be immune from all of that. In the days of Sunday Dankaro, It was a totally different environment. The people who ruled Nigerian football were people who were passionate about it, who loved it, who invested their time and their money in it. It was entirely a private sector-driven thing. But after Sunday Dankaro, particularly after the Olympic Games of 1980, then, we had crisis out of the Olympics. That's when part of the conflict actually started. But the greater conflict started in 1993 when Dr. Amos Adamu was in the NSC, and for some reason, he was made from his director of sports position in the Nigeria Sports Commission, he was made the administrator of the Nigeria Football Association. Administrator of Nigeria Football Association. And from that moment onwards, up to today, we've not known peace in Nigerian football. This is because, the people in the ministry now tasted of the power of running Nigerian football. And since then, they wouldn't let go. That is the problem.
The power of running Nigerian football, has that got to do with financial incentives?
Well, money drives the world. And that's exactly what has been driving Nigeria Football Association. Because since then, government has always been interfering, been intervening in how the leadership of the Nigeria Football Association emerges. They have had a hand, particularly Dr. Amos Adamu, who represented government at the time, even though he was never minister, but from his position as director of sports, as DG eventually, I think he became DG or whatever, but he actually knew how to use power. And he got everybody always in line to line up behind him and select who becomes the next president of the Nigeria Football Federation. The only person he did not succeed in installing is Kojo Williams, and that was because a higher authority in government at the time, was interested, and they made sure that they got everybody in line, including the minister then, Mr. Songo, to line up behind Kojo Williams. But you could see he lasted only a few months because they found reason to get rid of him. So government has always, and government means the Ministry of Sports or the National Sports Commission leadership, if the minister was interested, if he knew well enough, or the DG of the ministry would determine who becomes chairman. And they manipulate the constitution, the statutes of the Nigeria Football Federation. Every time there's an election, it is rearranged. They bring in new elements, and now it is so convoluted that you don't even know what rules there are. There isn't one statute. In 1 year, you could have two different ones and two different interpretations. So everybody benefiting every time there's an election. So, and when they get into power, they don't want to leave it because government wants to put somebody else in. And this time they read the genuine statutes and they find out that, look, they have immunity. They have their independence. They are not supposed to be under government. So this conflict continues. It's a struggle between government and those who government installed into power, and they are leaving power. So every 4 years, we go through the same ritual.
Chief Segun Odegbami, thank you very much. We'll come back to you. Let's pause you now and go over to Chief Onigbinde, who is joining us via Skype. Chief Onigbinde, give us your own perspective on this matter. And of course, in giving us that perspective, I would like you to also talk about something, because Segun Odegbami was talking earlier about the applicable statutes. Some years ago, probably about 20 or so years ago, there was talk always about Decree 101. Every time you read the papers, 101, 101. So where are we? Why do we have this conflict now? And whereas in the era of Sunday Dankaro, everything was peaceable.
Well, thank you very much. I thank Chief Odegbami for saying it all. I have repeated often and often that the problem with Nigerian football is more administrative than technical. And that was what Chief Odegbami was trying to make us to understand and accept. And whether we like it or not, that is the major problem. And I'm also happy that he referred to the period when all these problems started. When Amos Adamu was brought on as a sole administrator, and things started, moving wrongly. Amos Adamu is my friend, but we are now talking about Nigeria. We are not talking about personal relationship, and so we must face the truth. The major problem has been administrative. Now, all shades of characters of people have come into football administration in this country because of the connections, because of what they are going to get from the game, not what they are going to put into the game. And this is unfortunate. But unfortunately, again, this is not peculiar to football. It's not peculiar to sport. It's a general malay in our system in Nigeria. Nigeria runs a system of who you know and not what you know, who is right and not what is right. And that is why we are not getting a lot of things right. Nigeria is a country where a carpenter, because of his closeness to the powers, will become chairman of a medical committee in this country. It's most unfortunate. And that is why we're having the problem we're having. Now, the problem starts from the lowest level. People have been talking about government interfering. How can you do anything in a country without the involvement of the government of that country? How is it possible? And it's like creating a government within a government. But the limit and the mode of operation has to be spelled out and understood. Right from club level, we've been having problems. People have been talking about Nigeria infringing on the statutes of FIFA, but they emphasize on this question of election or no election. And that is very funny. I can quote here not less than 5-6 areas of FIFA statutes which have been consistently infringed by Nigeria. And nobody is talking about those things. And these are the areas, the most important areas. But people are hammering on this because of what they are going to get from it, because of who is there, who is going to get something for them. Now, let's start from FIFA statute, Article 2, which deals with objective of running football. The opening sentence, it is not made the opening sentence by mistake or by coincidence, but to emphasize the importance. The opening sentence reads, to improve the game of football constantly. To improve the game of football constantly. Are we improving the game of football in this country? Where is our developmental program? We are not improving the coaches. So if you are not improving the coaches, you cannot talk of improving the players. So a lot of problems. Then again, I think in Article 19, it states that the governing board of any football body must be democratically elected. The governing board of any football body, and one of these football bodies are the clubs. That is the beginning. When did we conduct election into the board of any football club in this country? The implication is that by FIFA regulations, we don't have one club in this country. And what are the implications? If you go into election into the board of a football club, there will be some assurance that it is only football people that will be involved. It is representatives of this club that will go to form the local government association, and the representatives of local government association will go to form the state association, and from there to national association. But when you have all shades of characters coming from the club level, then you are in trouble already. And that is why we are where we are. And that is why I have said that the Yorubas believe that when a wall of a building tilts outward, supporting it with forked stick will not stop it from falling. Because at the end of the day, the whole thing will fall, the stick and the wall will fall. So the Yorubas believe that what you have to do is to break it down, break the wall down and rebuild from the foundation, especially in the days of mud houses. That is what I think Nigerian football needs now. And that was what I said, and some people started calling me, threatening, calling me names that I wanted. I said, if we have a break, if I were in position of government, I will be the person who will write to FIFA to give us some years of respite so that we can fall back and reorganize our football from the foundation. That is the problem. If you have, we have seen series of funny appointments into football bodies in this country, right from local level. In fact, I don't remember when last an effective election was conducted into a local football bodies, not to talk of clubs. Not one club in this country has democratically elected board of governance. So these are the problems. So, and that is why when I said, okay, let FIFA ban us, and we fall back and reorganize our football. But that's because that's what we need. Complete reorganization of our football. And for as long as we continue to operate the way we are operating, you cannot have it right when you are not doing it right. My problem is not with who is in position, whether Pinnick or Giwa or anybody. That is the problem. But what is done when you get into that position, that's my concern. And we have not been doing it right. And I'm happy Chief Segun Odagbami said it. For a long time now, we have been, wobbling and fumbling. And now that is why we are where we are. Now people are talking about government interference. There is one funny thing happened last week. We were accusing the government of interfering. We ran to the same government to write to FIFA to allow one section to continue. And that is not interference. And again, in this country, when you go to the government to ask for money to run your football, and the government now wants to know how you spend that money, you say they are interfering. By the time you go to them asking for money, they are not interfering. But when they ask you, you give your wife some money to go to the market. And when she comes back, you say, okay, what have you got? Did you buy this? Then the wife says, oh, come on, it's my business, it's not your business. How does that work? A lot of people have said that football cannot run in this country without the support of the government. To some extent, I say yes. As I said earlier on, you cannot do anything in this country without thinking of the government. So, question of running football without government interference is unreasonable. So, what do? You can run football in this country without direct financing from the government. I remember in about 2003, when the then governor of Oyo State, late Lamadeshina, virtually forced me to come back to Shooting Stars. I committed him. I said, will you allow me to run it the way it should be run? He said, Chief, please don't report anything to me. Go ahead. We have confidence in you. I came in there. In fact, I started the exercise in 1990 when I changed the name of Shooting Stars from football club to sports club, because I wanted to expand the scope of supportership. If you are not interested in football, you are interested in basketball, we have a team for you in volleyball, in swimming. So the supportership will be so wide. And so by the time I came back in 2003, I said, okay, you supporters, what's the name you are calling yourself? They say they are supporters. You are cheating yourself. You are the club. Let everybody come with 1,000 naira to register as a club member. Not as a supporters member, as a club member. And as at that time, I believe I could get 1 million people calling themselves Shooting Stars supporters. 1 million times 1,000. I will have brought in 1 billion naira. And what I was going to do, Shooting Stars by today will have had its own stadium. We will have had a 5-star hotel which we will be using for camping. You don't need to pay for camping, hotel, and so on and so forth. And with that, and in fact, I graduated the membership. Platinum members, 10,000. Gold members, 5,000. Silver members, 2,005. Pokuluwe, the cheapest of them, 1,000 naira. And if you and I are friends, and you are enjoying some benefits because you have a 10,000 membership, I have 5,000. Wouldn't I want to upgrade my own? So the 1 billion I was talking about could rise to 3, 4, 5 billion in a year. What was I going to do with it? We will have established the money Manchester United makes from gate takings is not enough to pay 10 of their players. Where do they get the extra money from? We will have invested industries, supermarkets, and so on and so forth. And Mazembe today travel in private jet. Who are Mazembe people compared with Shooting Stars in terms of supportership? But because of the way everybody is there for what he can get from it, not for what he can put into it. And in that case, now that was membership drive. After the membership drive, then we will go to the stock market. If the government wants to be part of it, let them come and buy shares. And then, but then the club will be run by members. We have zonal groups who will be sending delegates to the national. Now, I mean, I'm just giving that as one of the examples. It's a lame excuse, but people raged a serious war against me at that time because every Nigerian believes that government money is easy to spend and go away with. But when it is corporate money, you may not be that lucky. So the first thing I saw when a new governor came in was Onigbede is not a member of our party. Onigbede is not from Oyo State. And that was the collapse of the whole thing. Then of recent, some people started wanting to operate that. It is one thing to know what to do. It's another thing to know how to do it. And if you don't do it properly, it will collapse, and that will be the end of it. So we need to reorganize our football. That's my main concern. We need to reorganize our football right from the grassroots. We are talking about development. The first paper I wrote on this was in 1965. That was 53 years ago. Up till now, I have not seen a functional developmental program. And if you want to develop, you want to improve the standard of education in any country, your first port of call is production of good quality teachers. You want to improve standard of sport, your first port of call is production of good quality coaches. When I was on CAF Technical Committee, we came out with a program to improve the standard of coaching. That is, we wanted to grade all African coaches. And we said by the year 2012, anybody who didn't have a CAF license should not be allowed to sit on the bench for a CAF competition. And we expected that to go down to the local level.
Thank you. Now, since then, we'll come back to you in the course of our conversation. Let's hear from some of our guests in the studio. We'll go to Honorable Godfrey Gaya. Here we are. We've heard from Lagos and Ibadan there, talking about the challenges, the problems we've had with our football in Nigeria, looking at what it was before and where we are today. And a lot of things came out from what I just heard. We're talking about leadership, we're talking about involvement, not allowing the private sector, to handle the issue of football very well. Let's hear your views.
Well, first and foremost, the Nigerian Football Federation should have a true identity. As it is now, the NFL has a dual identity. It depends on where they want to go or what they want to do. The identity will manifest. If the NFL is coming to government now, sometimes they even call themselves Nigerian Football Association, because by law, there's nothing like the NFF. Now, if they want to approach FIFA now, the federation name comes first and foremost. So we'll have an NFF that's operating and is being supervised by two different bodies. And they want to dance to the tune of these bodies at the same time. And that would not be possible. If you come back to Nigeria, the Nigerian Football Federation is basically a parastatal under the Federal Minister of Sports, where the minister has override responsibility to supervise them. So if the minister is supervising the NFF as a parastatal under it, certainly one cannot wish away government interference or government's intervention in the affairs of the NFF. Now, if NFF wants to really strictly be an affiliate of FIFA, of course, they have their own set of rules that tells them what to do and what not to do. So if you want to marry the two sets of rules and the same body will operate both, certainly there will be conflict at all times. Now, I have always said this. FIFA has their own rules and regulations. At no time in history has any of these FIFA regulations or laws been domesticated. So as long as they are floating, as long as they're not captured as part of our legal system, it will be difficult for us to operate the way we are doing. We've always advanced that it's not a matter of saying we want to just strictly be FIFA, we want to strictly adhere to FIFA. But they also have some other parts that are strictly government. What about the finances? What about the funding? What about the provision of campaign expenses? What about participation in competition? All these are always borne by government. Now, if NFA will say today we want to strictly adhere to what FIFA wants, then they must detach themselves from government. They have to bring back that autonomy that they ought to do. And I keep saying, we cannot settle all the problems the way we are running or going about it. We need, like Onigbene said, we need time to come inward, look at ourselves, and do the right things. How do we do it? When people say FIFA will ban us, well, I always laugh. FIFA cannot afford to ban us, despite what they were telling us before Monday. FIFA will ban Nigeria. It doesn't be possible. One, Nigeria is a very serious stakeholder in FIFA. Two, before FIFA comes to banning you, there are other intermediate steps that they will take to ensure that the crisis before you is settled. First and foremost, if there was issues, FIFA should have sent the investigation committee to look at what is on the ground. Thereafter, report back, saying, for the committee to see it and find a solution to a problem. If that does not work, FIFA has a capacity to form a normalization committee so that they can now be given a terms of reference over about 6 months to look at the crisis within the federation. Thereafter, this 6 months will give the normalization committee time to look at our own laws, Time to look at the relationship between the NFL and government and so many other things. It has happened in Uruguay. They had a normalization committee established on the 21st of August because issues similar to what we have here are what we are seeing in Uruguay. They will be given time up to February next year to look at their laws, to look at how the relationship between the Federation and FIFA and all that. It has happened in Mali. It has happened in Ghana. I don't know why we only rush our own things here, making people believe that, oh, we are going to be banned by FIFA and therefore the needful things should not be done. Everybody needs time to go to the drawing board at times to get certain things done. My take will have been, as this crisis is brewing and it will continue to brew, if we don't go to the fundamental, to the basis to do the right thing, if the foundation is faulty, no matter what they build upon it, you are wasting your time. So I think the foundation established the NFF is faulty. We need time to really sit down and get it done. How do we get it done? Now, if the normalization committee is approved by FIFA, after there is no intervention, it is FIFA that will send the same normalization committee to you. But it will be to give room to the federation to look at our own laws. How does it operate? To look at the way we do things. Like Baba Ondingbede said, when it suits NFF, they do things their own way without looking at FIFA. Like the appointment of all the committees, it was by NFF to suit their own purpose. If you want to operate well, there must be the Congress, which must be immune from the executive. In our own system, it is not so. All the NFA state chairmen are supposed to be members of the Congress. But the present NFF has co-opted most of them into executive function. So if there's a Congress now to even debate and say how things should be done properly, you have already married the two arms of government into one. And the executive always has the power. So fundamentally, there are things that are wrong with the way we run our football, that unless we get them right, we can never get it correctly. Unless we do the right thing, we always have the problem out there every 4 years. Every 4 years is the year of the election. It's also the year of the World Cup. People know what comes into the World Cup. Just like Chief Odegbame said, when there's money, people go haywire. Everybody has seen what has happened, and everybody wants to be party to it. So let us get the things done, properly defined, properly identified, and see how we can get it done. But we cannot do it in this confusion. We cannot do it by somebody giving counter directive today, withdrawing and giving another directive tomorrow. We can't get it. The best and the only way for me is let Allah FIFA to have a normalization committee for Nigeria, give ourselves 6 months, get the right thing done, and then we can take off from there.
When you say normalization committee, what exactly are you referring to?
Yes, if there are crises recurring like we only have in Nigeria after every 4 years, FIFA as a body operating and controlling football, normally we set up a committee which is called normalization. It's from the word normal. You bring them in so that they will look at what is really bedeviling the federation, and then they look at their own FIFA rules and regulations, and then they marry them and bring the same two into tandem to operational purposes. They do that and they conduct a genuine election in proper conduct with FIFA. When that leadership emerges, they pack their load and go, and they allow whoever that has won successfully and fairly to take over the affairs of their federation and run it down in line with or in tandem with the FIFA rules and rules. By that time, they will have removed the so-called government interference. They will have given them the autonomy. If it means amend the law, they will do it. All these laws we do in the National Assembly, they are too wordy, they are uncalled for, they are unnecessary. All you need to do is one sentence, an act, the NFF Act 2018, an act for FIFA rules and regulations to be domiciled in Nigeria. Finito. Because everything is already covered by FIFA. When you do anything outside that FIFA, it's interference. So if you not domesticate it, it becomes part of our legal system. So even if you go to court, the court will refer you back to what they have. It is a football matter. No, this, we can't treat it because it's domiciled, it's accepted, and you have a document to justify your position. If you don't have that, we'll still go around in this vicious cycle 4 years and 4 years and 4 years, and we'll be drifting.
All right, Honorable Goya, thank you very much. We'll pause here and then bring in another guest who's, of course, been listening to the comments by the other 3 guests. Mike Enahoro, sports analyst. Pleasure to have you with us on Good Morning Nigeria.
Good morning, Nigeria.
All right, so let's have your own perspective. I mean, that's a number of issues on the table, governance, management, or lack of it, and what we need to do to get out of the cyclical issues that bedevil soccer management in Nigeria.
Firstly, I have to say thank you to the 3 wise men, my older brothers before me. Chief has mentioned a couple of things, and both chiefs, Odegbami and Onibinde, have mentioned a couple of things, and Honorable Guy has stressed on a couple of other areas as well. I think, to be honest with you, I think it's just a sincerity of purpose. If you're not honest with what you have to do, you would come back to this same situation all the time. For 3.5 years, nobody came up and made all this furore. The question is, why now? That election word is a bit of a misnomer for me. I think Honorable Gaya has said it, and Chief Onibide alluded to that fact in a long detail. Where you have a capacity for unaccountability, it becomes a free-for-all for everyone. It's a do-or-die affair if you are not accountable. Honorable here has served his time and is accountable to his own people. Chief Onibide is accountable to CAF and FIFA as a technical advisor. Chief Segun Odegbami has also, as a footballer, you will play and you'll be accountable to the fans and the club that you played for. So again, when you come to become the president of the federation that has no accountability to anyone in particular, and you, like Honorable Gaya alluded to, you float between what works for you. There are a number of times that everyone else looks at that particular environment and begin to see it. And I will tell you this, the laws are there, the statutes are there, the regulations are there. What Chief was alluding to, saying the structure for clubs, if you go to the NFF statutes, you will find that there you have to be democratically elected into a club chairmanship. It's there. But do we practice it? If there's no sincerity of purpose, then you would find what you're having today. Were the elections properly conducted in 2014 that kicked out Aminu Megeri? Yeah, there was precedent that nobody has served one term or more, beyond one term. So if you don't go back to being honest, were those elections properly conducted, the one that's taking us all into court right now, if we want to be Nigerians and we want to be really honest and solve these problems, were they properly conducted? Everybody has their own views. But if you go back and say, we're doing this for football, let's remove the personalities and the objectives and everyone's ego and everybody's goal. Is this in the best interest of football? We've had a National Assembly here that has had an act since 2006. We're in 2018, 12 years. We've had acts that have come into this country that were enacted within 19, 20, 25 weeks. This is 12 years. So everybody needs to own up to this problem. The government, the players, who are the key stakeholders, so-called stakeholders, have to own up to the responsibility and take their own portion of all of this. So the problem is not vented on the current actors right now. They are inheritors, and they float to whichever section fits their own purpose. Whether you want to be nepotic, whether you want to be tribalistic, whether you want to be egotistical, or whether you want to end up being chauvinistic as well. We all are part of the problem. If the government, like Honorable Gaya, FIFA statutes is 100 and something years old, it's there. That one line item that says we want to domesticate this rule so that we take out this issue is there. Ministers are not ministers for football. They are policy makers and policy holders and addressing policy, because we are going to the Olympic Games in 18 months' time. Should we bedevil our minister with a football crisis? We should be looking at a bigger picture. And then the two men who are sitting down here and having this conversation and having these arguments, can they not be the two people that can actually sit down across the table from each other in the interest of football, Nigerian football? There are 13,500 registered Nigerian footballers in this country. If you want to solve that problem, can you not both sit down and resolve the issue? And so we all have to take a blame for this. And at the end of the day, if you are going to collect government money and you are funding for 3.5 years, you funded yourself on government money, when you get FIFA money, you have to go and declare the government money you've collected. You cannot come and claim that they're interfering with you because they've paid your staff salaries, they've paid your matches, they've brought your players, they've done everything, they've ensured your travel for 3.5 years. So if you collect $8 to $10 million from a third party, you have to go and declare what you've done with that money for 3.5 years. And that's what everybody sees. The lack of pure accountability is a welcome development for charlatans and everybody who wants to come into football. So we need to be very honest with ourselves and not call anything the way it is not. We all own this. But where I will slightly beg my older brothers to slightly just digress from them and not disagree on the ban is there is ample room for us to fix the issue whilst still being a member, an engaging member of FIFA. We will continue to do this, and the engagement that needs to happen is the sincerity of purpose. This is about football. It's not about Amaju Pinnick and Chris Giwa. They're both young men, and they can go and sit down and just put their egos aside and put the center purpose in the interest of Nigerian football. When those two people can see that as being the central interest beyond their personal interests, because everything I've heard in the papers, look at it, it's about I, me, 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 me.
All right, Mike, I mean, you did say that, and you did acknowledge, and indeed the other guests also said that there are historical issues that both gladiators have inherited, and those historical issues are what we're dealing with. I'd like us to return to Chief Segun Odegbami in our Lagos network studios. Chief Segun Odegbami, it would appear that part of the challenge we are dealing with here, whether we're talking about accountability or otherwise, has to do with governance. And governance, of course, must be rules-based. And those rules can usually be found in either, mutually agreed terms, mutually agreed articles of association, memorandum of association, or the statute establishing a particular entity. Now, the argument isn't about whether or not there are statutes. There are said to be statutes, but why is it that these statutes or the provisions therein are being observed more in the breach?
Well, I've been listening all morning, and I tell you, at the end of the day, we haven't said anything that has not been said before through the decades, and the situation has remained the same. There must be a reason for that to be, and I think it's very simple. Very, very simple, because we don't have so much time. Look, if we want to solve this problem, it is all within the purview of the minister to handle. Unfortunately, he hasn't handled it well enough, probably because he's not so familiar with the football territory. My own recommendation is this. There was a court of sports arbitration that was to be set up here in Nigeria. In fact, they started the process so that issues such as this is not even peculiar to football. We have the same problem in basketball. We have in so many other sports. That body, that Court of Sports Arbitration, which was to be headed by Chief Justice Adoke Amesi, my friend, and has had at the time Osasu Obayuwana and a few others, was to be created to deal with these issues that the generality of Nigerians don't even know about. These are experts, and that would take away this issue of taking our issues to court, our problems to court. Because once you take those issues to court, then you create this confusion. What issues can you take to court? Which ones can you not? Definitely, you can take some to court. You cannot take technical issues to court. The result of a football match, the decision of a referee, and so many other things that you find within the laws of the game and within the statutes of FIFA itself. But as an independent body, the Nigeria Football Federation has its own rules and regulations, and particularly have the process of going into elections. That has nothing to do with FIFA. FIFA cannot even intervene in how we select our leadership of the Nigeria Football Federation. I have a letter from them which clearly states that nobody in the elections into the Nigeria Football Federation, nobody, no third party can intervene, including FIFA itself. So if you have aggrieved persons in there, you cannot go to the statutes of FIFA because it doesn't contain those issues that you are actually having conflict over. That's why people can go to court. And FIFA cannot do anything about it until you take the matter to FIFA to say, look, they are interfering again in this case. So we have this situation that is so confusing that generally Nigerians don't even know what the issues are, what the problems are. There is a court of sports arbitration that we should set up in this country. It was 75% done, and then I don't know what happened to it. They just stopped it. Please, let's go back to that issue. Get that court of sports arbitration set up. Any cases that you have that you feel dissatisfied with within the country, just take it to the court of sports administration, and its decision will be final. You don't need to go to the court, because now we are tied between the Supreme Court and FIFA. Who would win? You know, this is not a good situation at all to have. The minister can solve this problem. Amaju's tenure will end in 1 month. Giwa can be given something within the system going into the next elections. But please, let us set up this court of sports arbitration to handle all sports matters, disputes in this country. That is my recommendation.
Wondering, Joy, still with you, Chief Segun Odegbami, when you talk about the domestic court of arbitration for sport, I'm wondering where would that therefore leave the International Court of Arbitration for Sport, which is based in Switzerland?
No, it's an official court of arbitration recognized by the court of sports arbitration in Switzerland. It is recognized. It was to be set up, I think, by the Nigeria Olympic Committee. And it had basis, it had legal backing, it is done, you know, it is acceptable. It is not as if we are creating something that is totally out of the question. I don't know the details really, but I tell you that it was in process of being done, and it can be done. And if you invite Justice Adoke Amesimeka, he would tell you about it. They know about it. And even in the National Sports Commission, they know. Why it was stopped, I do not know. That is the answer. That is the answer, please.
Chief Segun Odegbami in our Lagos Network studio. We'll take a short break now. When we return, we'll look at some other issues concerning this current crisis in the Nigerian football system.
The team is visiting schools to teach children how to protect themselves from diseases. Do you know how we get illnesses like diarrhea, cough, and cold? No! They are spread through germs, which are everywhere. You collect germs that cause diseases. You pick up germs from any surface, like when you don't wash your hands after going to the toilet, while playing. And then you can get sick because of germs. That's why you need to fight germs to stay healthy by washing your hands and taking your bath with Dettol soap to protect from up to 100 illness-causing germs.
Wash, wash, wash your hands. What you have to do is bath, bath, bath yourself. Dettol soap every day. Wash, wash, wash your hands.
If you hear a bomb explosion or gunshots of an active shooter, that might be a terror attack. At such times, always remember 3 action words: run, hide, report. Don't try to run towards the terror scene to save the situation, because there might be a second bomb blast or another attack. Run far away and take cover. Make sure you are safe first. Yes, it is in our nature to sympathize over the hurt, but remember, only trained personnel can help in such situations. When in a secured environment, promptly call relevant authorities and help will come. For anonymous reporting, call 09630-3250-5 or 0813-2222-106. If you see something, say something. Nigeria, unite against terrorism. This message is brought to you by the Federal Ministry of Information and Culture.
Jennifer, don't tell me you're still looking for chapters for your expo.
What expo? I'm reading to pass.
Yeah, right.
I beg, we all know even if you study, the surest way to graduate in this school is to do a rejo.
Or better still, we hook the lecturers, Abby.
No, that's a thing of the past. I would not get a certificate I cannot defend. I would not be a burden to the nation or the society by fixing or buying certificates. That does not add value to my life. This is the era of change, and change begins with me.
This message is brought to you by the National Orientation Agency in conjunction with the Federal Ministry of Information and Culture.
All right, welcome back, and it's still Good Morning Nigeria. We are reaching you live on the network service of the Nigerian Television Authority. We're right here at the Abuja headquarters studios, and all our 4 guests are still with us in Lagos, Ibadan, and 2 of them here in Abuja. We have tweets that have come in, and we'll quickly take those tweets now so that our guests can, take on other aspects of the conversation. Let's take this from DW, that's the handle, DW Nigeria Limited. Crisis at Football House is a replica of what the political establishment has been going through. The masses are the worst for it.
Now, one more from DW. It says, those at the leadership are there for the personal political ambitions and not football advancement.
And Beneme Dominic has this tweet: thank God FIFA compelled us to abide by her rules, and soccer issues should go with FIFA Court of Arbitration and not Nigerian courts. If you, that's what it said. I take that again. Thank God FIFA compelled us to abide by her rules. Soccer issues should go with FIFA Court of Arbitration and not Nigerian courts.
And the next one is coming from Boss Spy. He says, football is the only thing that can unite Nigeria presently. Nobody should trade with the unity of this country for personal gain.
Dele Jack Solomon has this tweet. Now we commend, the timely intervention of the presidency through Vice President Yemi Osinbajo on the conflict rocking our national football. However, the Minister of Sports must be on the same page with the presidency on this matter and must resolve to respect the rule of law on NFF's leadership.
Bulama Talba tweets, the entire management of NFA should be reshuffled if really Nigeria wants to solve the administrative crisis in the NFA.
This is from a handle Untold Story. And it says, Chief Onigbinde has said it all. FIFA should ban us. We need a total overhaul of what is happening at Glass House. It is obvious that some persons are using their own contacts against our own constituted law in Nigeria. FIFA law cannot override Nigerian law. All right, so those are the set of tweets that we can take in the meantime. But there's a point raised by Chief Segun Odegbami. I would like Honorable Gaya to speak to this with regard to the establishment of a court of arbitration, a domestic court of arbitration for sport in Nigeria. How was that supposed to pan out? And how would that have been a panacea to the recurrent crisis in our soccer administration?
Well, in any system at all, you must have to have a level playing field for things to work. And so the system must allow room for people with misgivings or disagreements to be able to vent out their anger, believing that if they so do, they will have solution to their problems. Unfortunately, we don't have such systems in this country. And that's why at some point in time, it was the general agreement that Nigeria should have its own court for arbitration of sports, so that every matter to do with sporting events or sporting issues are brought before such a court. That will have in any way removed the recourse to regular courts. But again, you cannot just do that by wish or by fiat. Necessarily, there must be some legislation too that will warrant the establishment of same. And like Mike said, it started actually in the Sixth Assembly, where a bill before the House was to enable such formation to be made, so that Nigeria would not have to travel to either Egypt, where they have one in Egypt, and of course Zurich. So we worked to that level. But like I said, whenever you're pushing, you will discover that there are other interests that may be for or against. That bill was also a creation of the NFF that needed such a bill to be approved. When we took it to public hearing, so many other interests too came up to oppose so many other sections of the proposed law. At the end of the Sixth Assembly, it never saw the light of the day. And the way the House is, whenever there's a new assembly, it starts from the beginning. So when I came in on the Seventh Assembly, we started from the beginning. And like I still talk to you today, that has not seen the light of the day. Like I said, for over 12 years, what have we been doing? This not passing such bills has caused a lot of delays in getting footballing or sporting matters resolved without so much rancor. Like I said initially, we didn't need all the weddings in the previous bills. We didn't need the verbosity of the bills as proposed. All we wanted was a one-sentence bill that will accept the domicile all that will have as laws or bylaws by FIFA or any other sporting international body for us to do the needful. Once it is so done, that those laws are domiciled, it is provided for in the bylaws for court of arbitration of countries, like the one we were proposing in 2006. So that will have, in effect, checked the system, solved the problem we're having, and there will be no recourse to regular courts. Now, the other persons had to go to court. Why? Because outside, like outside technical matters, there are also matters that do with individual, their fundamental rights to enforce it. And when it has to do with someone's fundamental right to enforce or to find a solution to, you cannot say because there's a FIFA, so the president cannot go to court. So we need to see how we can marry both sides in such a manner that can give us a leeway and a way forward in resolving sports dispute. Otherwise, particularly in football, it will still go back the same style that we've witnessed in the last 20 years.
Thank you, Honorable Guy. Let me bring back Mike Inahoro into the conversation. For me, listening to this conversation, it is obvious that there's so much going on with personal interest. Why can't we go beyond personal interest and look at the interest of the country and the game?
I'll answer you with I'll borrow from Chief Onigbinde and Odegbami. If you're not accountable to anything, then, and you can pick and choose which sections of the law or guidelines that you want to respect, then I will use Chief Onigbinde's example of a wife not responding to the husband, saying it's none of your business after you've collected the money from the husband to go take care of household things. If and at any time that we are supposed to be accountable, we are not held by the authorities to hold us to accountability, then we have a problem. The Congress, like Honorable Gaya has said, is supposed to be totally independent and checkmate the executives. But if they are now in consonance with the executive, then they will not perform their function. The Congress is not supposed to hold every time for elections to come and rubber stamp what the executive wants. They're supposed to hold for the interest of every footballing stakeholder in the country. These regulations for accountability must start from them. The Congress is supposed to demand an audited account for how you've run football every year. And that must be published for millions of Nigerians to see. When was the last time you all read an NFF audited account? They are there, don't get me wrong. It's not that they are not done, but they are not for the executive. They are for everyone else. The minister, like Chief Odegbami was saying, should have accounted that the monies I paid for your staff salaries and the monies I paid for your matches, I need to see exactly how it is so that I can account to the federal government that this portion that I gave to you guys was judiciously used and brought back. So why are we waiting till the 4th year? So if somebody is running at their own personal capacities, be you secretary, be you president, be you executive board member, and you're not held to account that line item of your executive charter that says this is the job you have to do, and that is the person that you're supposed to be accountable to. If that is not in place, then you will find that this becomes a personality challenge. And everybody in Nigeria has the right to step up to you to say they want a piece of that action. And who are you to say no? Who are you to say no? Because the rule that guides what you're supposed to do and the checkmates that are supposed to be in the system are not enforced. The guidelines for the NFF and the guidelines for FIFA are clear for all to see. But we keep abusing them, all of us, me and everyone who is a stakeholder in this, have abused that. And then we come on the 4th year and we say, now it's time for us to get you out of there. And the reason is this. If this election was held last year, I'm sure it's only the people that are involved that will show up. Because there's money in the system right now, like Chief Odegbami alluded to. There's money in the system right now. There's money from government. There's money from FIFA that is in the purses. And you are holding an election on top of that. Come on. If this was last year, we would not have this conversation about Nigerian football being in crisis. No.
It's a gubernatorial, gubernatorial election as we have at the state level. Chief Onigbinde, joining us still via Skype from Ibadan. Is there a sense in which, all right, our football has, as Honorable Gaya said, has this duality. On the one hand, it's run as a parastatal. On the other hand, the governance framework ordinarily mirrors that of a corporation. A Congress is the equivalent of your members, into the members of a company in general meeting. From amongst them, you will have your audit committee, and then you have your board of directors, who are the executive committee. And of course, the members in general meeting would hold the board of directors to account. But if it appears that there's now a relationship such that the Congress and the executive is indistinguishable one from the other, and there are no checks and balances, and these are infractions, as it were, of the establishing statutes or articles, where should people go to for soccer to ensure that you get back to the root, the organizing principles, that's to say your articles or your statutes? Can we get back to that foundation and say, look, how do you set up, your governance framework and be sure that anyone who runs foul of it, gets to face the penalty? Oh, fortunately, Chief Odegbende's Skype is frozen there. I hope he heard us. But Chief Segun Odegbami, I'd like to put that question to you, if you heard what I was saying. In terms of the governance framework, everybody the point has been articulated that, fine, the rules are there, nobody's abiding by the rules, but there are basic foundations, basic foundations to say, look, this is the statute. These are the entities you are supposed to have, members in general meeting or Congress, as it's called, your executive committee. This is the relationship between one and the other. And if there is a breach, where do you go to ensure that everyone gets back to the starting blocks?
Well, that's a tough question to answer, because the entire structure, the foundation of it, how the people, the stakeholders, the role they play in assembling the Nigeria Football Federation board, as it were, the constitution of the committees, everywhere you find manipulation and, personal interests and, patronizing friends and cronies and all that kind of it. The entire system is just not functioning well because we are not established properly. There's nothing correct about it. You find that those who are genuine football people, a lot of them are not within the system. You find people who are pretenders who are running the system. So you cannot have, proper structures and policies in place to drive anything. And that cuts across the entire sports industry. In all the federations, really, it is the same. We must go back to the basics again. We must go back, trace our history back to where we started, where we got it right. We were getting it right before, until we started to dismantle everything that we have done. And this is a reflection, really, of the country, unfortunately, is a reflection of the country. The issue of sports is not a priority of government, has never been a priority of government. So if a government should list 41 priority areas and sports is not one of them, then it just tells you, what we are facing. I really don't have the answer to that, but I know that the particular issue we are discussing now, that of the elections, the crisis in the NFA presently, is a particular matter, and we need to just deal with that. But to deal with sports as a whole or football as a whole, that's a long, road to still go. I don't know how we are going to tackle that, really.
Chief Segun Odegbami. Let's go back to Ibadan and link up with Chief Onigbinde. Now, listening to Chief Odegbami, he laid emphasis on what you also talked about earlier, which is about going back to the foundation. And Honorable Gaya also said the same thing. In going back to the foundation to resolve this problem, what should we do?
Well, Chief Odegbami said it right again. We just have to, there are rules and regulations, but the determination to keep to these rules and regulations, I think, is what makes the difference. I was saying earlier on that all these things are provided for in the statutes of FIFA, CAF, and even the NFA itself, but the implementation is the problem. And Chief Odegbami said something about court for sports administration. It's not a court for football administration, sports administration. And therefore, And also said something about the government taking sports as a priority. I believe that sports can be used to solve a lot of problems in this country. But because we are not paying adequate attention to it, we are running into trouble. For instance, we are talking about juvenile delinquencies, crime, and all the rest of it. It is the youths that are found in all these negative activities. We can use sports to withdraw them from the streets, to get them positively engaged, but we are not doing that. Now, let's come back to the present problems we are having. There is a clause in FIFA statutes which says that football bodies must have their own statutes, which must not be in conflict with the statute of FIFA. FIFA has court of administration. Do we have in Nigeria? And that was what Chief Odegbami was saying. FIFA, people are now talking about not taking football matters to ordinary court. I don't know where ordinary courts exist in Nigeria. I know courts of justice in Nigeria. But what does FIFA mean by talking about ordinary court? They are now referring us to the court of arbitration, that we should establish it. And this is the responsibility of the government through the Ministry of Sport, to establish this court of sports administration so that all sporting matters will be taken before it. And that is why people are, and let me say this thing quickly. Some of the threats we have been having from FIFA originate from Nigerians for selfish reasons. We have ideas of some of these letters being written in Lagos and getting somebody at FIFA level to sign them. And this, we are talking about not being selfish. Nigeria is a country where we put personal before national interests. Everybody wants to think of what is coming into him, not to the nation. And that is why people will always come out to threaten us, intimidate us. FIFA will ban us, FIFA will do that and that. And at any rate, as I said earlier, we are not keeping to FIFA regulations anyway. But let us start from somewhere. Let's have that court, and let that court should ensure that each football or each sports body in this country keeps to the rules and regulations as contained in their statutes. That is very clear. If we have that in this country, our laws don't allow bank robbery, doesn't allow kidnapping, but people still do it, and then the law will take care of that. So it's the same thing in sport. If we have our rules and regulations, how do we ensure that we keep to these rules and regulations? It's like in our politics. A lot of people spend a lot of money fighting for an elective position. And actually, they regard such money as investment. When they get into position, they want to recoup. They want to have back their money. The same thing is already happening in our sports, especially football. You want to go into an annual election or for yearly election, people spend a lot of money bringing people together. We are aware of some of these things. But if we have a controlling body like the Court of Arbitration, then we can take this matter to them. And where the Court of Arbitration fails, then of course we can go to the international body or go to our law court. So the first thing is to come down to the basic. Let's have a way of enforcing the rules and the laws of our football administration in particular. And you cannot do that until we now learn to keep to the rules. The rules are there, as I said. They are there. But to obey them, and when people are in power, it is absolute power. They will get around them, people they want to be around them, people who will listen, who will obey their command. It happens in our politics. There are some big politicians in this country who cannot relate with anybody, cannot put into their pocket. And it's not everybody that will fit into that.
All right, Chief Onimwinde, thank you very much. Some individuals are too big to fit into pockets. Honorable Gayo, you were a politician as well. But strictly speaking now, back to some of the issues. I mean, there's a consensus that part of what is required to be established is a court of arbitration for sport in Nigeria. That would be a court. That would be a court of record. It would be a superior court with all the provisions indicating, whether appeals will lie there from, to say the Court of Appeal or Supreme Court, or whether it will be a final court for sports issues. Just as we have, for instance, with the National Industrial Court. Until the Constitution was amended, we never used to have the National Industrial Court, which deals with labor issues. But can we, I mean, this will be tough to calculate, but what usually are the direct and collateral consequences of the recurrent crisis in our soccer administration?
Interest. Number one thing is interest, and selfish interest at that. What we're experiencing today, I saw it coming about 2 years ago. When the present crop of NFF was beginning to do certain things to ensure that this election goes their way, I knew trouble was being fomented. How? First and foremost, there were some league boards that ideally ought to be members of the executive board of the NFF. And the only way they can join and become executive board members was via election through the various leagues. The Women League, the Nationwide League, the National League, and the Premier League. The 4 elected chairmen automatically become members of the NFF board. By whatever reason, the present NFF board didn't feel comfortable in allowing those that were emerged by an election. So appointments were made, and those people so appointed were cronies and proxies of the present members, so they became members. 2 years ago, there was a Congress, and the Congress brought out the communique that was, to me, devilish, making NFF an inclusive preserve of some people. It simply said, until you've been a member of the board, you cannot contest to be a member of the board. Simply put, until everybody who had been a member or is a member is no longer alive, that's when a new member can come in. So these 2 documents, thank God for the minister. He fought against the Congress communique and therefore opened the room for people to want to aspire. Ordinarily, people already made it on their mind that since this is the kind of environment that will be ushered in 2018, then we must begin to fight and create reasons that this election cannot hold. That is one of the remote reasons. Like I said again, Congress is supposed to be like the legislative arm of the NFF, whose duty is to deliberate, advise, make laws to govern the executive, or to make the average Nigerian party to be a member of the NFF, because they are like our legislators, they represent us. Now, if all of a sudden you begin to encroach into the Congress and giving them appointments that can drag them from being legislators to executive members, then you're simply shortchanging the power of the Congress, and that happened. So some people felt if this is the system, that system will be resisted. And there was some Nigerians were jubilant that something happened and these people will not be in power to conduct the next election. My thinking is that we must swallow some ego as a nation by asking FIFA to give us the normalization committee. They're not bringing foreigners. They're bringing Nigerians knowledgeable in this business to enable us have that enabling environment. This foundation that we're talking about that is faulty, you don't need rocket science to get it done. You need people that are without that selfish interest. You need people that are focused. Give them 6 months like they're doing in Uruguay now. Let them come down here. Where we have gotten it wrong, is it our laws? Is it the way we have structured the status? Is it the way we're related with government? Let's put them on a level playing field. Let these same normalizing people sit down here and do a proper election by our own laws, so that they live here, we have a new president, we have a new executive board, and then we now have a already good working document to work with. Otherwise, we are too much into ad hocism. Today we just bring this man, tomorrow it doesn't flow, tomorrow is not in my favor, I fight it because I've been excluded. And at the end, we have a system that at all point is a dagger drawn within itself.
All right, thank you, Honorable Gaya. Let's go to Mike in Nahuru. While we're looking at the foundational problem and the need to restructure, it will also be good to also look at the side effect of all this crisis, especially on the leagues, the players, who get to bear the brunt.
A lot of people. A lot of people. Look, I don't want to be a staff of the Nigerian Football Federation or Association. I feel for those guys. You show up at work in the morning and there are policemen with weapons drawn, not to let you do your job that you are being paid for. Our government, the embarrassment and continuous embarrassment that this is bringing to our country. Our people, the fans, what legacy are we leaving for young children? I grew up going to the stadium with my father and his friends. I loved the game from there because my dad took me to the stadium. Which parent will want to take his child or son or daughter to a stadium these days to go watch a football match? What about the people that we are creating employment for, who are footballers, coaches, trainers, masseuses, drivers, supporting candidates? I mean, these people are the ones that bear this. And the general public. What is this doing to a potential sponsor who is looking to fund a football club? It might be just a football club in my village that you want to fund. But if it's going to be registered with the Edo State FA, you begin to say, why do I want to do this? So you have taken away opportunities for younger children, like Chief Onigbide was talking about in terms of economic engagement of youths and youth empowerment. You've just taken away jobs from those people. See, these are things that, while my three older brothers have said that we're looking at personality crisis, I just want to beg them to please try to understand with me. I love the normalization idea, of the normalization committee idea. I love the idea of a CAS-like situation. But if there is no law, we shouldn't shift this. If there is no law in Nigeria that allows us to run football, that doesn't put the minister in a very solid and strong situation all the time, because you are leaving him now to administer.
I'm sorry,
You're
I
leaving
asked this question earlier,
Yes.
Mike. We're pressed for time now.
Yes.
I recall 15, 20 years or so ago,
Yes.
it came over. There was Decree 101.
Yes.
Every sports analyst, writer was Decree 101. Even when the Fourth Republic came out, Decree 101. What happened to Decree 101?
It is now in transition of being a law. So when you have transitioned in to turn into an act, that vacuum you have now left for the minister to administer. And that's just the problem we face, because now you've turned the minister for sports in Nigeria into a minister for football, because that transition where the 6th and 7th assemblies could not do this, you are having it now that there is no enabling platform for you to administer the sports, because it's going to be written in black and white what the powers of the president is, what the Congress is, this is what we're doing, and it will be in line with FIFA statutes. It is a law.
All right, Mike, thanks a lot. That's part of the governance framework that soccer administration will need to have. Tweets have been coming in, and we'll just quickly take some now before we show our final appreciation to our guest. Buchi Owadioto says, we need total restructuring of our football. The lingering issues are more political than ever before.
Omogbola tweets, the NFF problem is beyond along. The crises have been on from time immemorial. It's a serious issue that's not peculiar to the NFF alone. Look deeper into our sports ministry and check how many of them are without crisis. Our appeal to the protagonists is to shed swords.
That's Amambala continues. It says Athletics Federation, Taekwondo, basketball, among others, are all having leadership issues which predated Dalong's appointment. We must take a holistic view of the crisis and deal with them on their merits.
And this one is from Law Alpha C. He tweets, we should be wary by the way and manner the judiciary is being manipulated for personal aggrandizement.
Delay Jack Solomon, we all know that FIFA is clearly against government interference, and this position is made clear when you decide to be part of the body. Then why are we not adhering to the rules? Let FIFA laws be made clear and signatories adhere strictly to those rules for resolving conflicts. That's how football is run.
Sani Michael Omakoji, NFF has become another powerful government in our system. always at loggerheads with each other. Is NFF bigger than the Nigerian government? It is glaring that greed has led to power tussle, and as such, the management of NFF should be disbanded and transferred to other MDAs.
Very quickly, this Awunuji Joshua, that's where we're jumping to now. It says, if a ban is what can easily bring us to order, we should also introduce ban in other areas of our system.
And then let's take this last one from Anthony Enahoro. He tweets, FIFA government to stop interfering in football, but how achievable is it when NFF is under the Ministry of Sports? Football can only be independent if it's carved out of the Ministry of Sports.
All right, we'd like to appreciate our viewers who have sent in those tweets using our Twitter handle. And indeed, our 4 guests who have joined us in this conversation. From Ibadan, we were joined by Chief Festus Onegbinde, former Super Eagles coach, a member of a technical team of CAF, and of course FIFA technical instructor. Chief Onegbinde, always a delight having you on Good Morning Nigeria. Thanks a lot for being around today.
It's a pleasure. Thank you very much.
And from Lagos, we're joined by Chief Segun Odegbami, of course, former captain of the Nigerian Green Eagles that now became Super Eagles, also soccer administrator. I'm sure some of our viewers were wondering whether there was a Chief Justice who once played soccer for Nigeria, because he was talking about Chief Justice Adoke and Mesemeka. Well, in their heyday, Segun Odegbami was christened by the very well-known sports commentator Ernest Okonkwo. He was known as Mathematical. And then Adoke and Mesemeka, who was on the left wing, was named Chief Justice because he's also a lawyer. He subsequently became Commissioner for Justice and Attorney General of Rivers State. Chief Segun Odegbami, always a delight having you on Good Morning Nigeria. Best way to life, Nigeria.
Thank you.
All right, and then here with us in the studios, Honorable Godfrey Gaya, two-term member of the House of Reps and former chairman of the Committee of Sports. Thanks a lot for being around.
My pleasure.
And Mike Enahoro, sports analyst. Thanks a lot for being with us too.
It's a pleasure. Good.
All right, so we still have a lot to do with sports, and here's our desk with the stories.
Coach Gano Draw will be without his captain in an Africa Cup of Nations qualifier next month. John Obi Mikel will not be available when Nigeria faces Seychelles in their second 2019 African Cup of Nations qualification clash in Victoria on September 8. Mikel's absence was unconnected to the injury he suffered early this month with his Chinese club Tianjin Teda that is yet to fully recover from, hence his withdrawal. It is the second time that the 31-year-old will be absent due to an injury from the 2019 AFCON qualifiers, having missed a 2-0 opening home loss to South Africa in June last year. Coach Gano Draw is set to name his squad for the September 8 fixture on Friday, as the Super Eagles look to keep their qualification hopes alive for the 2019 tournament in Cameroon next June. Meanwhile, Nigerian league clubs are bracing up for a punishing schedule when the Nigeria Professional Football League resumes on September 2nd. The competition went on break in May ahead of the World Cup, but having lost 6 weeks due to the NFF leadership crisis, it now faces a race against time to finish on schedule before CAF's October deadline to submit entries for next year's continental competitions. A proposed schedule sent to clubs by the league management company LMC has matches taking place on weekends and midweek starting September 2nd and ending on October 28th. A top LMC official said the schedule is only a proposed plan, as they also await the clubs to make their input for the final schedule. Lobby Stars currently lead the standings on 48 points, 2 points ahead of Akwa United.
Thank you, Shea, with the sports news there. It's been a wet morning. Let's join the Nigerian Meteorological Agency for the weather outlook for the rest of the day.
Hello, and thank you for joining us on the weather forecast. We have seen more of wet days than dry days in the last 72 hours across the country. Most places are still expected to experience rainfall activities by weekend, as we now see from Friday's forecast. Isolated cases of thunderstorms are expected in the morning over places around Gombe, Potiskum, Kano, Zaria, Abuja, and the Yellow axis, while the inland cities of the south down to the coastal areas are to watch out for some scattered rains. Much later in the day, we expect more rainfall from thunderstorm activities over the northeastern parts of the country, the north central and the northwestern parts, while the inland cities and the southeast areas are expected to also experience some rains. Next now is our temperature forecast. Please stand by. Thank you for watching. I remain Paul Uba.
Well, that's Good Morning Nigeria for today and indeed for the week. We'd like to appreciate you for tuning in. The program returns same time on Monday, and that's 7 in the morning. Until then, do have a lovely day and enjoy your weekend. I'm Kingsley Osadolo.
And I am Joy Usago. Have a wonderful weekend.